Today we're going to talk about mood and personality illnesses. The objective for today is students will describe one of the mood illnesses by listing its characteristics. For your warm-up, in your opinion, what is a panic attack? Also, in your opinion, what is a phobia? Go ahead and pause the video right now so that you may answer your warm-up and then continue with your notes. Mood and personality illnesses. Now, when it comes to mental health, okay, some teens and young adults have mood illnesses. They could have schizophrenia if their mental health isn't at its best. They could have impulse control disorders, and they could have very specific personality illnesses. Now, first we're going to talk about mood illnesses. And the first one we're going to focus on is typically referred to as bipolar. In the medical field, it is also referred to as manic depressive illness. Now, when we talk about bipolar, we need to understand that there are two extremes of bipolar illness. The first one is typically referred to as the manic episode. Now, during a manic episode, people who happen to have bipolar disorder, they are going to appear overly excited. They're going to appear restless, almost like as if they are hyper. Now, because of this, during this episode, individuals are also going to have a difficult time concentrating, and that is concentrating on just about anything that is going on around them, whether it's work, whether it's schoolwork, or just having a difficult time concentrating on something as simple as having a conversation with someone. Now, during this manic episode of bipolar illness, typically people tend to have poor judgment. They're having such a tough time concentrating that they don't really think a lot of their actions or what they say and what they do thoroughly. So this could lead to potentially irrational behavior or behavior that's not typically the characteristic of the individual. They might think, you know what, it might be a great plan to get the shopping cart, go all the way up to that hill, and then just run into it and go straight down the hill. When in normal circumstances, when the individual isn't having a manic episode, they definitely would not do that type of action or behavior. But because they are in the manic episode, they're overly excited, they're restless, almost like hyperactive, they can't really concentrate on one thing, and they don't think things through. That is what could lead them to potentially participate in that activity. Now, here are a few stats if you take a look at the orange image. Now, 25 is the average age of bipolar diagnosis. And oftentimes, the age in which they diagnose bipolar disorder could be because of several reasons. Maybe the individual does not have confidence to speak out and try to seek help. Sometimes there could be a long process from when they first start to seek medical help up until they finally get the diagnosis. Now, about bipolar disorder, pretty much has the chance of affecting half of men and half of women potentially. Now, there are over 10 million Americans with bipolar disorder today. Now, 83% of patients with bipolar disorder actually have very severe symptoms. And again, the symptoms could be like we discussed with the manic episode, where they are overly excited, they're restless, almost hyperactive. Now, 4 is the number of forms the disorder can take. Okay, that means that there are at least 4 ways that bipolar disorder basically could surface up for the individual. Sometimes that consists of uh, um, the amount of time that they spend between each extreme, between the extreme of manic episode and the other extreme, which we're gonna discuss now, which is deep periods of depression. Now, during these deep periods of depression, the individual basically shows a lot of the symptoms and the signs of someone who is clinically depressed. Okay. Now, what makes bipolar the illness, bipolar illness, is that the individual will spend um, a long period of time in this deep depression, and then as time progresses, a few days, sometimes even weeks may pass. They might kind of come back to the middle between the two extremes where they, act like they normally would, behave in the way they normally would, right before they get to another manic episode. Now, again, in between the episodes of deep depression and the manic episode, that is typically the time in which the individual behaves normally. Okay, they're not depressed and they're not overly excited and showing a lot of the signs and symptoms of the manic episode. Now, for your first quick write, in your opinion, which extreme is more harmful to the health of the person with bipolar illness? A manic episode where they're overly excited, where they can't concentrate, where they aren't able to judge their choices appropriately, or a period of deep depression? Go ahead and pause the video to record your answer and then continue your notes. Now let's talk about schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is the severe disturbances in thinking, mood, awareness, and behaviors of an individual. Now, typically with schizophrenia, an individual's mind is basically split off from reality. Okay? That means that they may talk to themselves. They may have inappropriate emotional responses at times for situations. They might drastically yell angrily. They might behave in a way they might be seen as violent, very, very irrational to what would be normal behavior, if you will. At times, they might act strange. They might feel as if someone or something is controlling their thoughts, sometimes even their actions. And at times, individuals with schizophrenia, because they can't really differentiate between what's actually happening in real life and what is occurring in their own mind, they may be at risk to potentially harming themselves. Now, some, not all, of potential early signs of schizophrenia in young adulthood, nervousness, restlessness, almost similar to not being able to concentrate. They might display episodes of depression. Okay, they might have a lot of anxiety. They might have a lot of trouble concentrating. Their thinking is very unclear. At times, their self-confidence will diminish. And one major early sign is that they could have very low levels of energy. Their schoolwork or their work performance will severely decline. And one of the most common early signs of schizophrenia is that they start to become socially withdrawn. That means they are less willing to, and at times less able to be around other people and interact with other people. Now, dissociative identity disorder, also known as DID for the acronym. Now, the image you see here is of a movie that is a pretty good illustration of dissociative identity disorder. If you've ever seen the movie Split with um, this gentleman here, you will see that this individual actually displays this illness because they have basically multiple personalities that they believe they are. Now, this one is different than schizophrenia. People with dissociative identity disorder basically will alternate between multiple identities. Now, I don't remember exactly what each one of these identities' name is, but pretty much you have the main person here on the left. Okay, they believe in their mind due to their dissociative identity disorder that they are actually more than one person, or that he has several different identities. And this isn't something of a pretend play or anything like that. It's almost as if from one moment to another you have, the regular person, and then it's almost as if they black out and then become one of their other identities. Sometimes they're able to remember that they black out and become someone else. Sometimes they're not able to. It varies. Now, causes for dissociative identity disorder sometimes include, being exposed to long-term physical, emotional, or even sexual abuse. Pretty much any type of trauma that you can think of could be a cause for that dissociative identity disorder. Now, for your quick right number 2, what is the difference between schizophrenia and dissociative identity disorder? Go ahead and pause the video to record your answer and then continue on with your notes. Now let's talk about impulse control disorders. Now, when it comes to these mood and personality illnesses, typically, if an individual has impulse control disorder, those people can't resist the impulse or the drive to act in a way that could be harmful to themselves or even harmful to others. Now, an impulse control disorder, gambling could be considered one. Shopping could be another. Kleptomania, which is just the impulse or the drive to have to steal, not necessarily stealing because they want to or because they need it, just they feel a impulse in their mind and in their body to steal. Now, for your closure, I want you to describe one mood or personality disorder and its characteristics. Go ahead and pause the video to do so.